The federal sales cycle, as you should know, is broken into three phases, right? Business development, capture, and proposal writing. Today, we're focusing on business development and what makes a great business developer in the federal market. The purpose of business development is threefold. It's to learn about an agency, build relationships, and find opportunities. When I say it's about learning about an agency, it's understanding that agency better than almost anybody who works at that agency. Their mission, their vision, their goals and objectives, the challenges they face. As you go forward and understand an agency better and better, you'll understand the org chart, how their program offices are structured, where your company might be able to fit best and help the most. That's learning about an agency. Building a relationship as part of the business development area, that's starting and building relationships where you're meeting people, right? People know you and you know them. When you got to that stage, you got a relationship, and that relationship gets better and better the more you get to know them and the more they get to know you or your company. And the third one is finding opportunities, right? Your job is to keep the pipeline full. As a business developer, we have a sales funnel that comes down like this, and a bunch of opportunities go at the top. Hopefully they're slam dunk opportunities, but the opportunities come into the top, and then as a company, we work them, and down from the bottom, we've got sales coming out of that funnel. But if no one's putting opportunities at the top, we're not going to have sales at the bottom. And that's the purpose of a business developer, is to identify those slam dunk opportunities. So just again, the purpose of business development is to learn an agency, build relationships, and to find opportunities. In this training, I'm going to teach you 3 business development skills that are needed in order to succeed in the federal market. Like I said, great business developers, they follow a simple process, right? They start and build relationships. And then the third thing I'm going to talk about is that business developers, great ones, are disciplined. What does that mean? So I'm going to share that today in today's training. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I teach process tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a government owner, or a small business government owner, as a small business owner in the federal market. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process, when you go from A to Z, is just repeating that process the same way over and over again. That's a proven process. When you follow a proven process, you're going to have predictable, repeatable results at the other end. All right, so we're going to go through a fire hose of training today, but it's fun training. I like it. I especially like business development. I think it's the foundation of success in the federal market. If you don't have new sales coming in, then you're not going to be able to close sales, and you're not going to be able to win contracts, right? And so business development is the start of this entire sales process. It's not the whole process, but it is the start. So it's really important, and it's one of the reasons I like it. Today, or this first bullet I want to talk about, is this idea that great business developers, you follow a simple process, not a complex process. The more complex anything gets, the harder it is to follow, the harder it is to believe in it and get excited about it. But a simple process, which I'll teach you in a second, when you have a simple process, it's easy for you to follow, and it's easy for others to follow you as you go along that process and know where you're at. If you watched yesterday, I talked about making sure you learn the government's acquisition process, and I showed you they have a roadmap for how they acquire services and products that you might sell. Well, you want a similar thing. You want a process for sales. When I was and I want to talk to you about the difference between a complex process and a simple process. So for those of you familiar with Shipley, that's a very complex process. I am not a fan of it at all, and I'll come back and talk about why. I think it's a perfect billion-dollar company tool, right? It's very complex. I describe it as a waterfall approach to sales. But in sales, one of the things companies keep missing, and I think the whole concept of a 96-step process approach, is they miss the whole idea that we salespeople like to talk to people. We don't like to be back in our office filling out paperwork or doing all this administrative task. We like to be out talking to people. And what's important for companies is that our salespeople are out talking to the customer, right? Talking to teammates. And so the idea behind Shipley, I describe it as a waterfall approach. It's perfect for large companies, not even large smalls really, but large companies. It's super complex and it's needed at that point, but it's kind of like waterfall, and the difference between waterfall and agile project management, if you will. So if you think about, we're going to send a spaceship to Mars and back, Waterfall approach says we're going to plan out the entire trip there and back before we even begin. We want to see that plan, believe in that plan, it goes forward. And that never is, well, that's been necessary, and it's really necessary for something like that. But an agile approach to this, if we're going to Mars and back, we just say, hey, we're going to Mars. We know we got a couple of these things. We need to build a spaceship. We need this. We've got the high level stories, if you will, of what needs to get done. And then we just start building. And along the way, we refine what's going on. This allows us to be agile and nimble, the whole point of agile project management or software development, this agile and nimble approach. Well, in sales, we want that same thing. We want our salespeople, we want our company, especially when we're small, 20 million and below, we want to be nimble. We want to be able to respond to the customer that much faster as we move forward. And so this idea of having a simple process is to make sure it's really easy to understand. And let me show you the 7-step process I created that we follow. And so you should see it here. 7-step process begins with research, targeting, outreach, leading to strategic relationships, which will deliver or help you find slam dunk opportunities where you can write winning proposals and start winning contracts, winning sales. So if you want to win sales, you need to submit winning proposals from slam dunk opportunities that you uncovered through strategic relationships you have built after you did outreach, picked up the phone and called somebody for an intro meeting. And you did that outreach based on a targeted list of who you want to reach at your customer. All of that came from basic research, right? And that's a simple process. Research, targeting, outreach leads to relationships, which lead to opportunities, which lead to proposals, lead to sales. It seems so simple because it is. It is simple. And we designed it exactly that way. When you think about anything that you have to do to move forward in sales as a business developer, you need to follow this process. And so, as we move forward, and I talk about what are some of the traits or what makes a great business developer, they follow a simple process that is easy to follow for them, right? They come to work every day and they know, am I doing targeting today? Am I doing outreach? It's not this overly complex activity. An example is, having super complicated tools like a PowerPoint for a capture plan. I know a lot of people might challenge me on that, but from a salesperson's perspective, that's complex. More importantly, that's just adding friction between me and my customer because I have to stop and create this whole big PowerPoint deck that briefs leaders, et cetera. But really what we're trying to say is, are we moving the opportunities forward? And you can't do that unless your process, those 7 steps, have clear definitions. So an example is a strategic relationship has a definition. It's not people who are friendly with each other. It is people, companies who are willing, in agency, right, the customer, who are willing to work with each other and get to know each other more and more as they move forward. A slam dunk opportunity, right? The process isn't just an opportunity. It's about having slam dunk opportunities. When you have these things defined, it becomes very simple to follow each day as you move forward. The second great skill that business developers have, and this is fundamental to everything I teach when I work with customers one-on-one, is business developers must have the ability to start and build new relationships. That's vital. If you don't have relationships, then you're not going to be able to do business development in any kind of great way. You're not going to be able to really do research in a great way. And then also, if you don't have relationships, how are you going to be able to shape opportunities? Capture, the second step of the sales lifecycle, capture is about shaping an opportunity. If you don't have relationships, how can you shape those opportunities? Business development is where we're starting to create those relationships that will be used over and over again in opportunities. When companies hire business developers, I give them some advice on what's the right approach. And so, again, going a little bit controversial here, perhaps. The first thing I say to them, two big things I say is that I want them to ignore when hiring somebody. Ignore their years of experience and ignore their Rolodex. And fortunately, I fit in both of those positions, so I can speak to this. The fact that I'm got years of experience, right? I bring the gray hair to the meeting. The fact that I have experience doesn't mean I'm any good at all. It just means I'm old-ish, right? It just means I have these years of experience, but it doesn't tell me how good am I. It doesn't tell you how good am I. And the second thing that goes with this that often is a mistake is people say, oh, they've got a huge Rolodex. I'm going to hire them because they got a huge Rolodex at Department of Energy. They know a lot of people at Energy and they've known them for 30 years. I'm like, well, who cares? Like, what if I don't want to stay in energy only? What if, energy people begin to retire or transition in any other way and new people are coming in, right? Where did you get these relationships? If you've had them for so long, where they developed at conferences where that was the old school way of meeting people, but now it's a different world, right? Social media is a new thing over the last 10 years, let's say. That's a activity that needs to happen. By the way, if you don't know what a Rolodex is, in the old days, we would get a business card and put it into a Rolodex, just staple it to a card, and you could roll this, whatever this thing is, this Rolodex, right? You could roll it through and it would just have ABC, and it was a phone book. And that's how we kept cards and numbers or something. But, we've got the internet now, we got LinkedIn. And so what I tell people is don't just use those criteria for saying somebody is a good business developer, because that's not a good criteria. That only tells me that you've got years of experience and you've got a large Rolodex. It doesn't tell me how good you are getting in and using that Rolodex, for example, when I need you to use it. So let me give you a couple of tips about, and you can think about this for yourself, or if you're a business owner, you can think about this for when you're hiring somebody. But two of the biggest questions I ask people when I'm participating in interviewing them as a business developer, and this is the reason I'm telling you, is because if you can answer these questions to yourself, or if you can see where you might be weak, you can figure out how to be a great business developer. But the first thing I ask them is, what's your process, right? If they tell me Shipley, it turns me off right away. But if they tell me Shipley, but I changed Shipley to match my way of doing something, then I'm totally cool, because now they've taken that massive process and they're showing me, hey, I follow this particular process. What I'm looking for more than just the name, though, whether it's the GovCon Chamber or the Shipley way of doing it, I want to hear their process. Business development, well, this is what I do. I do this, then I do this, then I do this. Well, great. What if this happens? Well, I do this, this, and this. Okay, when you get that information, what do you do with it? Oh, I go here. And so what I'm looking for is to understand what your process is. That's why I have that 7-step process, because when we talk about research, we're talking about that's going in and understanding the org charts and strategic plans, et cetera. And so if I hear somebody talking to me about their process, then I got a good understanding that day to day, this is what they're following. And the second question I ask them, and this is a big one, is if somebody tells me that they've won contracts, I've helped, I've been on winning teams. I see variations of this all the time, but it's always unclear to me what it means. But, $50 million or $100 million in winning, I'm like, that's cool. What did you do? Right? I ask people, what was your participation in there? And I want to be able to hear this back. And as I'm going to tell you this story, I want you to think about this. If you participated in wins or losses, right, you can't determine the final outcome. You can try to influence it as much as possible. But what was your participation in there? I'll give you an example. I'm a small business owner. I was a small business owner as a government contractor for sure for 20 years. And I had tens of millions of dollars in wins over my career. I don't really talk about that, right? But one thing I do talk about is how in 2018, when I came and started the GovCon Chamber, I helped push $3 billion more to HubZone small businesses. That's a big claim, $3 billion. How did you do that? And that wasn't contract vehicle. That was money awarded in that year. And I'm able to say, well, here's how I did it. First off, let's just be clear. I didn't do it myself. My contribution to that $3 billion win was, one of the things I did was I had 400 set-aside calls in that year, meaning I had 400 meetings, about 400 opportunities with tons of HubZone firms. I taught HubZone firms how to first get along with each other, and then I taught them how to follow a process to go after opportunities and push them to HubZone. That's why they won $3 billion. That's the contribution I made, is helping them in there. I also helped them by working with contracting officers and beginning to push on contracting officers to be more clear about why HubZone firms weren't winning. And the final thing that I did that was a major contribution to that $3 billion was I helped the HubZone firms reach out to every single congressional representative and senator in 2018 to teach them about the HubZones. They don't know about it. They're worried about the war in Ukraine, right? They're not overly concerned about the HubZone program. That's a tiny part of everything that goes on in the government. So it's our job to go out and teach them. Once they're aware of it, maybe they start holding agencies more accountable. And my point here is to say, if you ask me what was my contribution in the $3 billion win, I'm not saying I went in, did all this, and I won it. I'm saying, here's my contribution, which is perfect. And I ask you the same thing. What's your contribution to the business development or sales that are happening at your current company or in your experience? Can you describe where your contribution is? Bringing this full circle, as a business developer, I want you to understand some of the most important things that you can bring to your company are the ability to get into an agency and understand it better than anybody who works there, to be able to develop relationships within that agency, including the teammates who work there or have contracts, and your ability to find opportunities within an agency to bring it to your pipeline. Those three things are what you need to keep mastering as you go forward. And as I do the training, that's what I'm doing. Starting and building relationships, it's the lifeblood of success in the federal market. And so that's why we need you to be able to do that. So a couple of skill sets, just as a reminder here, don't rely on Rolodex, or some people have tables where they have a drawer full of cards. It's not about that. A great business developer doesn't have a bunch of things. They're able to get a bunch of things, if you will. So an example is a great business developer can go into any agency. I said Department of Energy. Well, a Department of Energy business developer should be able to go into NASA or Department of Education and find people's names who matter to the company, part of your sales process, or the people you want to reach out to, but find their names, their phone numbers, and their emails. And they have process or methods to be able to do that in any agency. What we want from great business developers is your ability to shift on a dime, right? What if all of a sudden the funding was cut at the agency you're working at? If you're a great business developer, you can say, no problem, let's go over here. We'll start again, right? People who have years of experience have a little bit of advantage of you because maybe they got to start, but I can put anybody in any agency, and in 90 days, I can have them operating as a great business developer. This is what we do in our business development course, right? Is teach people how to do that. And if you follow these 3 steps or follow the 7-step process that I laid out, then you'll find that you'll be able to get into an agency, build relationships, and identify opportunities. And so the last part of starting and building relationships is this ability to pick up the phone and schedule a meeting. So when I talk about outreach in the 7-step process, once you have the names, numbers, and emails, that's targeting. Then outreach is about picking up the phone and having an intro call. You cannot start and build relationships without an introduction call. Can I introduce my company to you? Can I learn more about your agency and what you're doing? 15 minutes, 30 minutes max. But if you can do that, then you'll be able to do this second major skill set of a business developer, which is starting and building relationships. So if you understand that part, as I switch and drink a sip of water, do me a favor, put relationships are vital into the chat, or relationships rock. Whatever you feel good at. By the way, just as a side note, so I have a business development course. It's 2023 version of it. We're releasing it this week, and opening it up again for people to be able to go after. But it has over 100 lessons. So I'm taking 100 plus lessons and trying to figure out, how do I keep doing these 30-day or 30-minute trainings in the middle of the day? So if I'm rushing or I'm pushing it in, it's because I really want to give you some of that information so that you can walk away today and have it. So let me just talk briefly about this third skill that I want you to pay attention to that makes a great business developer. And this is having discipline. So I talked about, when you think about business development in general, it's about learning about an agency. It's about building relationships and finding opportunities. In order to do that, you're going to be interacting with people a lot and you're doing your job. You need to have discipline. And when I talk about this, I mean self-discipline, this ability to make sure that what needs to get done gets done. So the first thing I'm telling you is we don't make excuses. If we're not getting into an agency, don't make an excuse like, oh, there's a good old boy system in place. If there's a good old boy system in place, that's just a roadblock. That's a hurdle. That's a gate. Your job is to smash through the gate, jump over that hurdle, or go around it. I have a whole separate training where I give you 20 different ways that you can go around a block or a hurdle, right? And a good old boy system, if you don't know what that is, it's just, a bunch of people have been there 20, 30 years and they only want to work with each other. That's fine. But if you really want to work in there, then you can get around it. And so don't make excuses about it. Sit there and just define it as a problem. I'm not able to get into the agency on this path. When you define the problem, then your next step is to think of the solution. So if you make excuses, you're going to accept the problem as I can't fix it. But if you define it as a problem that has a solution, then you'll figure out the solution. Oh, you'll go to your PTech, small business professional, people like me out there, and you'll say, hey, you got any ideas? Any one of us can give you ideas in a few minutes that says, try this, 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 this. I said self-disciplined, but also self-motivated. I heard this great line about nobody should have to motivate you, right? You should bring your own motivation. I should teach you knowledge and skills. I should help you make introductions or something, but I shouldn't have to motivate you to do your job. I said that research is the first step, right? Self-motivated means you go in without anybody talking to you and you start reading these documents that are 100 pages long. It's like, it's long. It's like, well, who cares? I mean, that's our job. Our job is to understand the agency, right? And so when you start getting to this, these tasks that you're thinking about, and I'm going to move on to another tip here about being disciplined, but you need to be self-motivated. You need to show up every day, fired up, ready to work. No one needs to push you. We describe it as I'd rather rein in a stallion than prod a mule. And the whole point is none of us want to be pushing people along. It's just not fun at all. And so one of the ways that you can help yourself be self-motivated, obviously, you need to just be have a good, strong life to be able to be motivated about life. But one of the ways you can almost make yourself self-motivated through action, right? Action leads to motivation, if you will, is have daily activities. Don't look at weekly, monthly, or annual activities. Those are measurements, milestones, deliverables, whatever, but daily activities. And what I mean by this is every day I'm going to spend 30 minutes researching my target agency. 30 minutes, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look on their website. I'm going to go to LinkedIn. I'm going to do whatever. 30 minutes a day research for it. I'm giving you examples. You decide what your day is like, right? I'm going to do an hour of outreach every single day until I have enough strategic relationships. When I have strategic relationships, right, I'm going to be doing something every single day on my top 10 relationships just to look to make sure I'm not ignoring anything. If I have 10 relationships that are strategic relationships, these are big relationships, I'm going to look on LinkedIn really quick. I'm going to look to see if they posted anything. And as you move forward on the activity that you do, you want to have daily activities. And the most important activity you can have is picking up the phone and calling people. Right? If you do that, you will help yourself and your company move forward so much more because people are going to answer the phone at some point. People are going to schedule a meeting. We do this all the time. This is not conceptual. We do this every day with customers where we're helping them or we're showing them how you go through this process of outreach, where you pick up the phone, asking for an introduction meeting, having that introduction meeting, right? One of the things that comes out of having daily activities and having these activities going on in introduction meetings is you'll have clear action items and next steps coming out of those meetings, right? So when you have daily activities, it will lead to everything else. It'll lead to the relationships. It'll lead to the opportunities that you're trying to define. But this idea of being disciplined, you have to do that, right? You have to pick up the phone and make calls 1 hour a day, I would say. If you're a business developer, everything else you're doing is called constructive procrastination. We need to be calling the customer. We need to be calling teammates. When we do that an hour a day, you'd be amazed how much success you begin to have because you're starting to talk to the right people. You're starting to learn the right information. You're starting to hear about the opportunities that fit for you.